Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Our chart webinar today is featuring Christina Heilig of Dewey's Pizza, and she'll be presenting on measuring success in training.
Right.
Welcome, Christina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. As Tara has said, my name is Christina Heilig. I have a history in L&D. I've served in many different roles, from instructional designer to senior instructional designer, communications manager, knowledge management manager, and now currently, as she had said, learning and development manager at Dewey's Pizza. I've worked in many different industries, including higher education, fintech, software, nonprofit, insurance, etc. And I've only been transparently in the restaurant industry about 2 years. There's been a lot to learn, and Chart has been pivotal in helping me network and learn where I had gaps and opportunities. So I feel like it's just my way of kind of giving back. So thank you so much for joining today. What we're going to be diving into is like how to measure the success or the impact of your training and performance improvement initiatives. And I want to say, we're not going to dive like super deep into data. We're not going to make it overwhelming. It's really going to be like, I just want to try it. Like, hey, for 2025, maybe a resolution is trying to use a process to show the value or impact of your initiative. So let's go into it with that mindset. And if we want to go deeper, we can always have offline conversations. I'd be happy to work with you through any other questions that we don't answer today. That said, we do have the chat box open, and we will be earmarking some time at the end for Q&A and discussion. So please just keep track of any questions that you have or pop them into the chat and we'll get to them. And reminder, you will get a copy of this deck and a job aid to try to apply what you've learned. So let's dive in. So I have a question here for you all. I was just wondering, to get you in the mindset of thinking about this. How do you know that one of your 2024 training initiatives was successful? And I was just wondering if anybody was able to share in the chat or would like to share. Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to just talk about it. Okay. All good. We'll dive in that case. All right. Next slide. This is just the title again, is Measuring Success in Training and Performance Improvement Initiatives. And that term might be new to some of you, so I just want to quickly hit on what is performance improvement. This is a pretty well-known model. It's called the HPT model, or Human Performance Technology Model. Basically, what it comes down to and what I want to highlight here is that training is just a piece sometimes of the possible interventions that we could enable or implement. And so I want us to think sometimes beyond training, because training, as you all know, like isn't always the answer. So this is a model that I like to leverage. The first year of my tenure at Dewey's was basically hanging out in this top left quadrant. It was just analyzing what are our needs, what are our training opportunities, what is the desired performance versus the actual, what is that gap? And then now I can start to address it. So when you move to the right, the last thing I'll call out is the intervention, selection, design, and development box. Training is just a piece of this box. There's lots of other interventions we can consider, like bonus structures, retention strategies, work environment, ergonomics, like all sorts of things, the tools that people use. So that's why the title is what it is, because we realize it's not always about training to help our organizations. Okay. Agenda for today, we're just going to look at why should we measure the impact of our work. We will review a simple measurement process. It's just a 6-step process, pretty simple. And then we will go through a practice scenario together as a whole group. And then I'll pause, see where we are with time, and kind of look to the group to say, do we want to go into a second scenario, which again, you'll have access to when we hand over this deck at the end, or do we want to go into QA and discussion? So kind of like choose your own adventure a little bit. All right, let's kick it off. I'd like to hear from you all, either in the chat box or by coming off of mute, but let's start to think about why. Like, why is it important, or why should we measure the success of our initiatives? And there's no one right answer. Ooh. Thanks, Alana, reading that. Okay, so we know if we need to change or stay the course, so we can show the value to the organization. That's a big one. To validate desired outcomes. I love that. ROI. We'll touch on ROI, but there's actually a difference between results and impact and ROI. So we'll talk about that a little bit more to measure its effectiveness. And so we know that it's working. Perfect. Yes, we're on the right track. We're aligned. Because the hard truth, this is a quote that I pulled out of a book, is without measurement, business leaders are left only with intuition and anecdotal information about training's influence. In the end, the development function is seen as a cost center rather than a business partner that can demonstrate value. Ouch, that hurts to hear, but basically we are responsible. If no one else is going to hold us responsible for providing data and to show the impact that we're providing to the organization, we need to be taking that charge ourselves proactively so that we're not asking people to guess what our value is. So a couple ways to prove your worth, some things to think about, is that L&D is a means to an end. And that end is a business goal. It's not numbers of how many people attended a class or how many hours of training were completed. Quite frankly, the business doesn't really care. We care about those kind of metrics, but the business wants to know, did you influence or impact a business goal with your initiative? In that vein, we should also be speaking the language of the business, not L&D speak and terminology, like things that matter to them: revenue, cost, waste, etc. Learn the language that they're using and tailor your language to the business. And when we speak about business, I often hear it's what the business wants, or we're working for the business, or whatever. We are the business. Like, we are part of the business, and we are responsible for driving value to the business and improving it. So we're not separate from, we are the business, and we need to start thinking of it that way. Lastly, we should be identifying measurable metrics and aiming to influence them. Why? That's how we prove our value. And it also keeps us like, it's our true north of what we're aiming to do. So we need to find those measurable metrics. Okay, next slide. There's lots of evaluation models out there, lots and lots. One that a lot of us might know or be familiar with is Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. There's also been kind of a 5th one tacked on, and I don't exactly know where that came from, but I appreciate it because it's ROI. I remember Kirkpatrick's as roll bar, kind of like a roll bar cage of a Jeep. That's just how I remember the levels. And I was just wondering if anybody knows what those letters stand for. Feel free to come off mute or pop them in the chat. And it's helpful to have like an acronym to help you remember. Yes, Craig. Reaction, learning, behavior, results. And that 5th kind of one, that's maybe a Kirkpatrick's thing, maybe not, maybe it's Phillips, is ROI. So I remember it as roll bar. All right, so let's take just a quick look at Kirkpatrick's. Those levels, as Craig has pointed out, are reaction, which are kind of known as like smile sheets, or how is the trainer doing, or is the content relevant to you? That's level 1. Level 2 is learning. Those are typically like your knowledge checks, or something, the content itself, like what you are learning. Level 3 is behavior or application. So for example, right now, this webinar is level 2, you're learning. If you provide feedback on the survey, that would be level 1 feedback. If you take the job aid from today and apply what you've learned, that would be level 3. You're actually changing your behavior, you're trying something new back on the job. The one that we're really focusing on today is level 4. That's results or impact. It is, let's identify metrics or KPIs that we want to focus on, and let's move the needle on those metrics. That's what we're going to learn how to do today in a very simple manner. And then ROI is return on investment. And I said there's a difference between the two. Results or impact is how we're influencing a metric. ROI is, was it worth it? Was the cost of the training to be designed and developed, was the cost of our call center reps or whoever it might be coming off the phones for an hour for the training, was that all worth it? Did we see a positive balance on the other end of that initiative. So that's the difference between 4 and 5. It looks like there's a question about how to come off mute, Tara, so I'm just going to call that out. And again, roll bar, that's just my way to remember these levels. Okay. All right, before we dive into the process, 2 quick slides on KPIs. What are they? Key performance indicators, could also be called metrics, but they're the important tools for measuring how well a company, project, or activity is doing. They provide, as we mentioned before, clear and measurable data to track progress, find areas that need improvement, and make informed decisions. Some examples of KPIs. For financial KPIs, we could be talking about sales, value add, costs. For operational KPIs, maybe it's production efficiency, or as we call it, throughput, like how many pizzas can we make in an hour? Quality, are the pizzas topped perfectly? Do we have a bite of, in every bite of pizza, are you tasting every topping? Like for us, that would be a quality metric. Workforce management is another for operations. Customer focused KPIs, that would be things like customer or guest satisfaction, loyalty, return sales, that type of thing, return visits. Employee focused, employee satisfaction, retention, turnover, etc. If you're ever faced with, okay, I have a training and or performance improvement initiative, but I don't know what KPIs I should be looking for, reach out to ChatGPT and just type it in. Like, what KPIs would make sense for this initiative? We're trying to influence this metric. What other metrics could be related? Use it to your advantage. And you don't have to type in any proprietary info. You're just looking for general KPIs. Okay. Let's dive into the actual simple measurement process. I've leaned on different models to kind of put this together. So it's a little homemade, and I did it in partnership with a friend named Therese, who I called out in the one of the last slides. I've included her contact info too. So I want to give her credit. We've created a 6-step process. And reminder, I will be providing this as a handout or job aid, so you don't really need to take notes, and you'll also get access to this deck as well. Step 1, so someone approaches you and says there's a training need, or maybe you proactively identify the gap between the current state and the desired state. How do you know that thing? What is the metric that shows that we have an issue? Go find that metric or KPI, and you can ask IT for help, or marketing, or HR, or whoever it might be. You don't have to be the one to go find all the data. As soon as you know what you need, reach out to your different departments and get that help, that support. So identify the metrics that are aligned with the request or need. Identify the current versus desired state of each targeted metric. Collect and analyze further data. Like if you need more detail around those KPIs, go ahead and find that out. And again, lean on different departments. Then we're going to quantify the data. What we're getting at here is like, make it matter, typically dollars wise. And even if you're working with something that isn't monetary, there's often a way to make it monetary. Like if you're saving time, think about whose time you're saving. What is their salary? What is their hourly wage or salary? You can typically monetize like almost anything. And again, use ChatGPT to help you with that too. Like, I don't know how to monetize this. Give me some examples. It can help you. Step 5, we're going to select and implement the appropriate training and performance interventions. Just means like, how are we going to tackle this? What are we going to design or develop and implement? And then lastly, we're going to do what we said we were going to do. We're going to measure the impact on those targeted KPIs. So what I have set up for us here is a scenario. I actually have 2. We'll go through one together, and then we'll see if we want time for you to kind of fill in the blanks some more yourself on the second scenario, or if you would like to go into Q&A and discussion. So the first scenario is we're a pizza chain restaurant, which is what I work for, is Dewey's Pizza. We're currently in 5 states in the Midwest, and I think we have about 26 locations now. However, this request in this scenario is completely fake. I typed it into ChatGPT to outline a scenario. So just know I'm not sharing any proprietary information here. But let's pretend a stakeholder comes to you, and maybe it's the director of operations, and they say something like, we need to increase the number of pizzas we bake during high volume nights. Okay, so they're coming to you as like an L&D or training manager with this information. So they probably want training. Let's follow that process. So step one was to identify the metrics or KPIs that are aligned with the request or need. And as a reminder, I have it at the top there. We need to increase the number of pizzas we bake during high volume nights. What kind of, and I'm asking you, either come off mute or go in the chat box, what kind of metrics or KPIs could you point to start to understand what is the current state? I'll pause there. Pizzas per hour. Yeah, we call that throughput. There you go, Jason and Kayleen. What else? What about the days of the week? Like, when are our high volume nights? Number of pizzas made per night, sales. Yep. Oh, hey, Kieran. Yeah, which nights are considered high volume? Do we account for holidays? Great question. All right, let's take a look. Obviously, these aren't all. I've just had, I think, 3, but here's some for the scenario. Pizzas baked per hour during 2 peak hours on Friday and Saturday nights. So we got more specific. We're like, okay, what are the nights? What are the 2 peak hours? Got it. And how many pizzas are we baking currently? Okay, got that data. Revenue per hour, meaning basically during the 2 peak hours on Friday and Saturday nights, what are we making kind of profit wise? So if we sell a pizza for $30, we're making $15 of profit per pizza, something like that. Guest satisfaction scores on wait time and quality, those could be taken into consideration. Okay, so that's step 1. That's literally it. It's not too crazy. It's just, what are we looking for here? And you could use the strategy called 5 whys to help the requester help you understand what the metrics are. So if somebody came to me and asked me these questions, I could say like, why does it matter the number of pizzas that we bake during high volume nights? Oh, because we feel like we could be hitting more sales. Okay, cool. Why does that matter? Well, because guest satisfaction rates are declining because wait times are increased. Great. Why does that matter? Keep going. And typically, like you'll find different root causes, but typically by the time you ask why about 5 times, you'll get to like the root cause. And each of those points to a different metric. If somebody's coming to you with a request, there's probably data red flagging it as an area of opportunity for them. So it matters to them and you need to understand why and get those metrics from them. Okay. So step 2 in this simple process is identify the current state versus the desired state of each targeted metric. Okay, I'm going to flip it back to you. Those of you in the restaurant industry, what could you look to see how many pizzas are being baked per hour and revenue per hour and guest satisfaction scores? Where do we get that data of current state? POS, point of sale systems. That would give us the throughput and sales. And then you should have some sort of like guest satisfaction survey kind of tool or program. Finance dashboards, that's a good one, Kayleen. Online reviews, yeah, cool. So that's what we're just trying to find out. Like, okay, we see through our POS that we are producing 80 pizzas per hour currently in the 2 highest volume peak hours of Friday and Saturday nights, 80 pizzas. Our revenue or profit during that period is $1,200, and our guest satisfaction scores are currently 85% positive. All right, let's work with the stakeholder and understand what the desired state of these metrics are. Okay, they want, instead of 80 pizzas per hour, they want 100. Revenue, that would translate to $1,500 based on that increase in throughput. And then we're really wanting to aim for a 90% GSAT score. Cool. We've got our metrics that we're targeting. We know what the gap is, and we're going to try to narrow that gap between current and desired state. Easy peasy. 3, time to collect and analyze data. Like if you didn't get enough data from the step above, or you just want more to flesh out the context some more, go ahead and collect more data. I have collect underlined because on the next slide, we'll go through the analyze portion of this. So collecting data, we've already talked about it. We can do that through the POS systems. We can do observation, just go and observe like what's going on in the kitchens. Why are we not hitting 100 pizzas of throughput when that's possible? And then guest feedback. Okay, so step 3 continued. We're halfway through the process, is now analyzing that data. What are some insights that we're getting? Well, in this pretend scenario, what we found through our data gathering was bottlenecks occur at the pizza topping station, where you're adding the toppings to the dough, and it's delaying the baking process. Also, we're noticing that oven usage isn't optimized, leading to underutilized capacity. So are we spacing the pizzas too far apart in the ovens? Could they actually be like closer together and we can fit more in at one time and therefore improve the throughput? Maybe. We're also noticing that the team struggles to keep up due to a lack of preparation and multitasking training. Okay, those are some good insights. You get to play detective, like as much as you can. It's fun to go and play detective, I think at least. All right, step 4 of 6, we're gonna go ahead and quantify that data. All right, so we know currently 80 pizzas per hour. We've got a maximum potential of 120 pizzas if fully optimized, which I thought we said 100 was our aim. So that's interesting that that's even expanded here. But the revenue per pizza is about $15 on average. That's our profit. So what this is looking at is $300 estimated lost revenue. Our target is $1,500. We're currently at $1,200 dollars of revenue per hour. So there's a $300 opportunity there. That's some good value. And then we also know that the team has not received training in the last 12 months. So that's something we can also point to, like maybe every 12 months we need some training on this to keep it fresh. All right. So step 5 is time to actually select and implement appropriate training and performance interventions. I know it's kind of difficult to remember what was already shown on the prior slides, so we're just going to show you what was suggested for this. The pizza topping line could receive some efficiency training on how to streamline that process and work collaboratively under pressure. That could include things like communications training, conflict resolution training to like, all right, we hit a hard spot, let's move past it, let's work together. Teamwork training. Oven utilization, we could implement training on maximizing oven space and timing multiple pizzas efficiently. So that's definitely a training thing that we could address. Pre-shift preparation, this is introducing new routines. So maybe not necessarily training, this is more of that performance improvement piece, right? Like, what are our workflows? What are our processes? What checklists do we need in place to make sure that we are preparing the topping line so that it is optimized for efficiency when it's go time during the peak hours? And then cross-training employees. This again is a training thing, but it's just saying like, oh, we could have someone, if it's slower on salads, they could pop over and help out with topping pizzas in those peak hours. Then we get that extra support that we need. So these are just some interventions. And then the last step after implementing those interventions is giving it some time. In this scenario, we're going to give it 30 days, and we're going to take a look and evaluate. Pizzas baked per hour. Has the output increased from 80 to 100 pizzas or more? Revenue, has it grown from 1,200 to 1,500 or higher? And the GSAT scores, are they 90% or better? Let's say that that's all the case, that's all true. Your organizational impact for this one training initiative, if you have 26 locations like we do, would result in over $1.5 million of value add for the organization. And that is just one training initiative. So how many millions of dollars could you be influencing and like impacting at the organizational level just from your probably tiny L&D team like our team, right? That's huge. And when you can take that kind of data to operations, that's when we earn that seat at that exec table. That's when we start to be seen as strategic partners and not just cost centers, but business centers. One thing I will say here, you might have a question that is like, what if multiple departments are involved? Like, for example, what if it's an initiative where OD is involved, or HR, or marketing, and everybody has a piece of this pie, keeping with the pizza theme. who gets credit for this initiative? I learned in a book, which I have linked in resources, it's called Aligning Instructional Design with Business Goals, that you can set up these estimations of impact per department at the outset of your project planning. So you can say like, hey, I think there's a marketing piece here. They should get 10% credit. I think there's an HR piece. They should get 15%. There's a heavy training lift. So we're going to say probably 25%. But get the department heads together to align on those estimations. That's what they are. There is no like hard science here. Get everyone together to align on and agree to those different percentages of ownership for the initiative. So if training only gets 50% of the credit for this initiative, then it would be half of that 15 million, which is still awesome. There's benefits to sharing the load, and that is it helps other departments realize that training can't really do everything on its own, nor should it try to, because that's rarely successful. For a training program to be successful, we often need manager buy-in, operations buy-in, manager support, follow-up, observation, performance assessments over time, etc. And so when we say who's responsible for what, it helps others see that this is a shared teamwork and responsibility initiative. So I'm just going to close that one with saying something I like to say is I love measurement and data because they do the convincing for me. Like this individual in the photo kind of looks like they might be convincing someone of like something. I don't have to when I have the data that speaks for our initiative. That said, it does help to tell the story of your data. If you just throw data at people, it doesn't do a good job of speaking for itself other than just like the figures. But you need to work those figures into a story that shows your value and impact and influence. And this has just been a great resource for me. It's storytelling with data. So if you want to learn more about how to do that, I would recommend this resource. I'm going to pause there. We're just going to do a time check, see how we're doing. Any questions coming out of that scenario that you would like to pose, feel free to come off by raising your hand or popping them into the chat. Okay, comment, Kayleen.
Kaylin, if you wanted to make a be taken off mute. Okay, just wanted to make sure you weren't trying to figure out how to raise your hand.
Yeah, so Kayleen says sometimes I think it's accountability that gets in the way versus training. 100%. That's why I just talked about like who owns different pieces of an initiative. We could say that managers or field managers or field training managers are responsible for 10 or 15% of the success of this initiative, and they could have responsibilities tied to it. And I think what helps is pure accountability. So if every department knows what they're responsible for and how they're influencing those metrics, specifically themselves, I think that's where we can build in some accountability. But also just it becoming a culture shift. Like for us, we have ongoing performance assessments and internal development plans that's very intentional about, hey, we are a continuous learning organization. We take it seriously. And if you start to revert or regress undesired behaviors, we'll get you back on that plan. So a little bit of a culture shift there as well. And, you know, ChatGPT probably has lots of great ideas too as well for accountability. Sue, how can you show learning improvement when the client doesn't or can't share their current state? For instance, how does one measure sales training success? Great question. If they're not going to share the data, then I would highly suggest that you get the approval for like A/B testing. Okay, like let your folks do what they're doing current state, but give me a group of your folks and give me a good spread of like high performers, average performers, low performers. Give me a good spread. And we're going to go ahead and give them the training just as like a test. And then you can see like, was there a move on any of those targeted KPIs from the control group versus the test group? That's one way. I'm sure there's lots of others. You can also look at trend analyses over time. So and they might not share it with you, but you could ask about it. Like, has that improved, or what have you seen regarding that KPI or that metric? Are you seeing a difference? So yeah, I understand that some industries are more buttoned up with that, especially if you're a consultant. That is much more difficult to get if you're a consultant, for sure. Training the noun can be great, but if training the verb isn't great, it doesn't matter. Definitely. You need that application, right? Just like with this webinar, if you're like, oh yeah, I learned some cool things, but I'm not really going to bother myself with trying the process or using the job aid to apply this back on the job. Yeah, well, cool. I hope you had a fun hour networking, but like you need the verbs, right? Go do the thing. Love that. Okay, Krista would love to look at scenario 2. You're welcome, Sue. So yeah, let's just do that then. How are we on time? Pretty good. Okay. This one, I'm going to be asking you all to fill in the blanks more as we go through. We did a restaurant scenario, so now we're going to switch over to the hotel side. All right, take me there. All right, hotel chain. Someone comes to you and says, we need to improve employee retention. We're losing a lot of money and efficiency to turnover. Again, hypothetical situation. There's no real data in here. Step 1, let's identify the metrics or KPIs that are aligned with the request or need. Go ahead and pop them in the chat or come off mute by raising your hand. What kind of KPIs could we look at here? Time and rule, yeah, for employee retention. Turnover rate, turnover percentage, training completion. Yeah, that's an interesting one, especially for new hire training. I really like that one. Okay, cost per hire. That's going to be huge for this scenario. You got it. All right, let's take a look. This hotel chain, which operates 50 properties nationwide with an average of 100 employees per location, has identified high employee turnover as a critical issue, leading to increased hiring cost and reduced service consistency. So some of you have touched on this already, but the KPIs include employee turnover rate, meaning the percentage of employees leaving within a year, cost per new hire, that involves recruitment, onboarding, and training expenses, and guest satisfaction scores related to service quality and staff interactions. Okay, so we've identified some metrics. Step 2. I'm just going to fill this in because it's more just like info you need for the scenario. Identify the current versus desired state of each targeted metric. Okay, so for employee turnover, currently we're looking at 75% turnover rate annually, which honestly, when I asked ChatGPT, it was in the 80s. So this is still kind of conservative with 75%. The desired state is 25%. It's very ambitious. And one call out I have there is if you have a stakeholder that has a very ambitious desired state metric, see if you can work with them on like, okay, how about within 3 months, we're at this percentage. And then at the next 3 months, we're at this percentage. Like you can work your way toward that final desired state, just to make it a little bit more realistic and to like give yourself some room to learn things along the way. The cost per new hire currently is $4,000 per hire. They want it to be 3,000 or less. Guest satisfaction scores, they want it to go from 82% positive feedback to 90%. Okay, so we know the current state versus the desired state for specific KPIs or metrics. Step 3, it's time to collect and analyze the data. Again, I've underlined collect because that's what we're going to talk about on this slide. So if I go back to those targeted KPIs, where can we get some of this data? Go ahead and pop it in the chat or raise hand to come off of mute. Yeah, I like how instead of like a specific thing, you're just like HR. Yeah, like if you can say to a department like, hey, can I get metrics or can I get data on this, this, and this? And that's all they need, that's beautiful. It saves you so much time. I've got a great HR counterpart that's like, yeah, I got you. Like, what do you need? Sometimes you really need to get specific and they might want a date range and for whom and, so you'll figure it out. LMS dashboards, HR reporting or scorecard. Yeah, the scorecard. A lot of us have scorecards, right? Like organization-wide ones, department ones. That's a great tool. Surveys, yeah, employee surveys, exit surveys, especially exit interview surveys. Those are huge. Like, and I know right now we are personally trying to increase like the number of exit interviews we get completed because we have an opportunity to get more feedback, and there's just an opportunity there. All right, I'll stop on this. So yeah, we're going to collect our data from, in this example, exit interviews. Why are people leaving? Employee satisfaction surveys. We want to assess the morale, their workplace culture, their suggestions for improvement, financial records detailing recruitment and training costs, operational reports from the 50 hotels. This one's really interesting. With 50 hotels or any number of like different locations that you all might have in your own space, you have like the higher performing locations and those that like might not be as high performing, or you've got lots of turnover, not so much turnover. Like, look to see what that variability is, because there's probably lessons to be learned there. All right, so we've collected our data. Let's analyze it now. The insights from collecting this data revealed that high turnover is linked to a lack of career development opportunities and insufficient onboarding. Okay, so like, I don't know how to do my job. I want to feel more confident with it. And I want to grow here. If you don't like do those things, then I'm going to go find a place that does, right? Long onboarding periods. Certain properties have better retention rates. This is what I like, suggesting localized practices worth replicating chain-wide. Like, what can we learn from those good examples? All right, step 4, it's time to quantify the data. This is fun for me, at least. So all right, we know that the current turnover rate is 75%, 100 employees per location, 50 locations. We've got a lot of data right there already. So if we look, it's like, all right, we've got 5,000 employees. If 75% of them we're losing every year, that means we're losing 3,750 employees a year out of 5,000. That's data. And it's costing us $4,000 per new hire. So let's just put that into a formula. That many employees times $4,000 per cost of hire, that's $15 million annually that's being lost or like wasted because of these high turnover rates. So if we go and we look at the desired state, what that looks like is at 25%, we're hoping to actually save over $11 million a year by reducing that amount of turnover or churn. That's huge. Going to 25% and then reducing that hiring cost from 4,000 to 3,000, over 11 million in savings. All right. Talk about quantifying. That's like really showing your value add. All right, step 5, select and implement the appropriate training and performance interventions. What are some ideas? What would you do in this scenario, or what would you suggest? And remember to think beyond just training, think beyond just L&D, think about our other departments as well. Remember, we had long onboarding. We didn't have a lot of career progression opportunity. We're not sure how morale is. Yeah, simplify, shorten the onboarding process. That's not only helpful for the new hire, but it's helpful for the existing or more tenured staff that are having to like work with someone who's in onboarding forever, right? Like, let's get them up to speed faster to help everyone out and have the more dynamic, effective, and efficient teams. Okay, let's take a look. Some possible interventions could include the enhanced onboarding program, career development training. That's something we're going to be doing, like showing people how they can create a career, or at least know what a next level role looks like for them. If we don't tell our folks that these opportunities exist and give them the resources to work toward those goals, we might lose them because they just didn't know. And that helps with retention, right? Like, that's really big. Employee feedback systems like ESAT or employee satisfaction surveys. Ooh, someone said in the chat, assign mentors. I love that one, especially for someone who's becoming a new manager. They can really use mentors. Benefits communication, that's a great one. Yeah. we've got lots of benefits that sometimes people don't know about, right? So I'm actually working with HR to help them make that known more, like use the benefits. These are available to you. Again, trying to like retain individuals, keep them healthy and happy and with us. Recognition and rewards programs as well could be leveraged. I like town halls too. Good one, Kayleen. And best practice sharing. Remember those hotels, like some of them are doing really well with retention. Like, tell me how you're doing that. Let's share that wealth of knowledge. All right. So step 6, this was the last piece of the process. After 6 months of implementing these interventions, let's evaluate. Has employee turnover decreased from 75 to 25%? That was a target, right? Has it reduced the cost per new hire from 4,000 to 3,000? That was another specified measurable target. Same with GSAT. Have those scores improved from 82% to 90%? And then just something that is just kind of a yes or no is, have onboarding times been shortened and are new hires achieving full productivity faster? And then did we meet that like projected $11 million plus in savings regarding turnover? And that's how it's done, right? It's leveraging your different departments, pulling the information from where you can, and just following a simple process. You can make it more complicated and like more complex as you go, but like it's a great starting point, I feel like. So I will stop there and we'll open it up now at this time. It's a good timing to switch over to Q&A and just general discussion about anything that you'd like to discuss on this topic. I'd love to have some people come off mute if you like, and maybe share some of your experiences too, lessons learned.
I will also, I've gotten some questions in here. I'm going to, Christina, if you also want to share that link with everyone, because I know not
Yeah.
everyone can stay on through all of the Q&A. So
Yeah.
the link to the presentation. The first question I have is, what's your approach to isolating the impact of training from other factors? Who gets credit?
Yeah, so that goes back to something we touched on a little bit earlier. Again, I learned it in this book, and I'm going to skip ahead to the resources slide to show you that I have linked the book. It is Aligning Instructional Design with Business Goals. So it's like the second from the bottom. This talks about how you can kind of divvy up who gets credit for an initiative and work with the different department heads to come to an agreement on who should get different amounts of credit for the initiative. So if it's a huge lift on marketing, marketing gets the majority of the credit. And if training is only kind of maybe like probably a 20% impact, then we're only getting credit for 20%. But again, kind of the benefit of divvying it up is that it also helps other departments realize we need you. Like training can't just be like a Band-Aid. Oh, training did something, boom, we should be good. And then when it doesn't get follow-up or measurement post implementation and it fails, they're also not coming to us with an open bag like, hey, why didn't this work? Like, no, we needed actually managers to follow up and continue to observe and report back or get people back on a remedial track if they're regressing. Like, this should be a shared thing, right? Good question. Tony.
Tony, I just took you off mute. But you have to take yourself off mute too. I allowed you to talk.
We're testing this out. It's new for us. I don't know. We might have to wait for the chat question.
Tony, you have been allowed to talk. So as soon as you can take yourself off mute, you can do that. I can't, I don't have the ability to take you off of mute. So I'll read another question while you see if you want to do that. What KPIs would you prioritize if you were launching a new training initiative, and how would you know if it was successful?
Yeah, for that one, you don't really have the like a clean, how do I want to say it? Current state versus desired state. Like you just have to figure it out on your own. Or if there is no current state, like we have a new tool or a new process or a new product offering or something. There's really no historical data. So what you would want to do is probably try something like A/B testing to say, this is the group that's going to receive the training. This is the group that isn't. And let's see what the difference is. That can be helpful just to establish a baseline. We can also use something like trend analyses. And there's another, so trend analyses would be like looking over time, are we getting closer to what we want? Because we don't really know what the baseline is, but is that thing improving? So whatever the initiative is, try to find a KPI that's aligned and then just check to see that it's improving. And there is another method talked about in this book as well, the aligning instructional design with business goals, about how to care for that sort of a situation. So good question. And it looked like someone else raised their hand as well.
Yep. Caitlin responded saying maybe look at industry trends, but also I just sent to Katie Kendall. If you want to unmute yourself, you can talk. Just so everyone understands, if you raise your hand, I can give you the ability to talk, but in the lower left corner on the audio, you just have to click on that and unmute yourself.
There we go. Now
There you go.
So I have a quick question. And now we don't have great numbers on how to like measure the effectiveness of trainers. So I work in the training department, L&D, and we have C stores. And we have certified training managers, and I kind of want to measure their effectiveness as a trainer. Like, are they a good trainer or not? And we'd like to tie this into an evaluation, but I haven't had any good ideas, even with brainstorming. So I was wondering if you have any suggestions on like what's a good tool to measure that.
Yeah, I love this. So it goes back to smile sheets, level 1 reaction. They've been downplayed as smile sheets. It's just like, yeah, this training was fun. I liked it. But again, I'm going to go back to this book a third time, starting on page 110, level 1 reaction. There's so much goodness we can get out of level 1 evaluation, such as like, was the content appropriate? And you can know that by like looking at the assessments, like, are they passing at 80% or better, or are people failing at like certain things or certain topics? And are they actually doing better with a different instructor with like the same content, the same type of presentation, but there's a difference between instructors. And so you could see that with assessments. You could see it with feedback about the trainer themselves. Like you can ask questions about the trainer, like, do you feel like you had enough time to think through answers before you responded to a question? Or did you get like the follow-up that you needed when you asked a question? So you can specifically ask about the trainers themselves too. You can ask about the appropriateness of materials. Learner loyalty is a really good one. This one is, would you recommend this training session to one of your peers? Yes, no, why? And what that will do is show you like, I found this really relevant and helpful, and I can take what I learned and apply it back on the job, and I feel confident about my ability to do so, versus someone who might have had a session with another trainer and they don't feel that way. They're like, I still have questions. I'm not assured, didn't get what I needed out of this. So that would be some good like A/B testing. The learner's intention to apply the new knowledge, skills, and attitude back on the job kind of goes to that a little bit. And whether they plan to apply these things back on the job. He goes on, and I'm just like, wow, I have a newfound respect for level 1 reaction evaluations. So, and then also the level 2, which is the learnings, which is like the quizzes, the assessments. And then, yeah, I'll stop there. Just, I was really impressed with like all the suggestions that were provided in this book on that. I hope that was
Yeah,
helpful.
that sounds like it has a ton of suggestions.
Yeah, it's really good. Kayleen said NRA also has some resources for industry trends. I like that. National Restaurant Association. That was Jen. And then Kayleen said monthly. Kayleen compares the certified training restaurant results and non-CTR restaurants like that, can point to trainers that are falling behind or excelling. Good one.
Okay, I have 2 more questions, and then that'll be it unless any more come in. But how do you communicate your training initiative results or impact?
I start by first aligning on the initiatives that we want to prioritize per quarter with our executive team. So we developed a tool to kind of weight and score our different opportunities for training and to say what we think should be the highest priority for this quarter. So it's typically 3 things that we're taking to the exec team. I present it as a slide and say, these have been identified as our top priorities for the quarter. I give them data on the value that I think we can enjoy from these interventions or from these initiatives, and I ask for their alignment. That's first and foremost, is just getting that alignment, getting that buy-in. They might suggest something else, and that's fine, but I also want to see like the work that they did to prove that it should be prioritized. But anyway, we get that alignment, we do the initiatives, and then what will happen is we share the results. Like, how did that go? What did we see with those targeted measures, those KPIs that we were targeting? Did we move the needle on those? Did we close the gap between current and desired state? And it's coming full circle and just, closing that loop with the executive team and others who might want to know.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the last question is, what role do managers play in reinforcing the skills and behaviors taught in training programs?
Yeah, we talked about it before, but it goes to like the sustainability of the initiative. Like if we just think of training as like a Band-Aid or a quick fix, and it's all on training and it's just a one-time event, we're probably not going to enjoy great success. We want that follow-up. So you can incorporate things into your initiative, such as manager discussions before and after training sessions. You can assign managers to complete, like in Skooks, we call them OJTs, or on the job trainings, which are like checklists that a manager has to sign off on. Like, yes, I saw so-and-so do XYZ as should be done. Good. Or no, we need to work on this. And really it's tying their name to those assessments to say like, yes, this individual is doing great or not. And there's some accountability built into that. And then also like at the higher level, like when our field training manager comes in and they're looking for consistency and application of what we're seeking, are the managers holding their teams accountable to what we are setting out? Same with our RMs, the regional managers, they can be doing the same thing. So just building in different pieces of accountability, and especially peer accountability, can be very helpful for the manager sets. Thank you.
Okay.
In the chat, Kayleen says we audit the restaurants using video to spot check behaviors. That's cool. I've not heard of that. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you everyone for joining us today. The recording will be on the website by the end of the day.
Yes, thank you all so much. Feel free to reach out. I've got my links also to LinkedIn in the deck that I've shared, and my counterpart who helped put this presentation together, her contact information as well. So thank you so much. Don't be a stranger.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jason.